Hey, Crystal here. Today we're working on the double moss stitch, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to knit it flat in rows and how to knit it in the round, plus also show you how to bind off in pattern with the double moss stitch. To knit this tutorial I'm using worsted weight yarn, a number 4 medium yarn, with 4.5 US size 7 knitting needles. We'll start with knitting the double moss stitch flat. We are going to need a stitch multiple of 4 plus 2. So I have cast on 30 here. You can cast on any number. If you want to adjust from my cast on, you can add or take away 4. Okay, for row 1, we'll start with a knit 2. And then purl 2 and knit 2. Now we'll repeat across, purl 2, knit 2 to the end of this row. Okay, now we're going to turn and work row 2. Row 2, we are going to start the opposite way with 2 purls. So we'll purl the first 2. Then we'll begin our 4-stitch repeat across, which is knit 2, purl 2. So on row 2, we are knitting the knits and purling the purls. Okay, that's the end of row 2. We're ready to turn for row 3. Row 3 is a repeat of row 2, so we'll start with 2 purls. But since we've turned here, we're looking at 2 knits. We're going to purl the knits, 2 purls. Now we'll start our 4-stitch repeat, knit 2, purl 2. So I'm looking at purls, I'm going to knit 2, and then I'll purl 2. Okay, end of row 3. We're turning to work row 4. Row 4 is a repeat of row 1, so we begin with 2 knits. And again, now we are knitting the knits, knit 2, and then purl 2, purling the purl, and knit 2. So we'll repeat that across, purl 2, knit 2 across. Okay, so now for the length of your project, you're just going to repeat those 4 rows. Once you have knit to length, we're going to bind off. To bind off in pattern with this stitch, you're going to stop after a row 4 and bind off as if you were to knit a row 1, which would be the next row in the pattern. Knit the first 2 stitches, then bind off the first stitch. We're using a basic bind off, so pull the first loop over the second. Pull that loop up loosely so it's not too tight. In the pattern, next we would make 2 purls. So we purl 1, then bind off. Purl 1 and bind off. Next is knits. So knit 1 and bind off. And knit 1 and bind off. In that way, you bind off, knitting what would be the next stitch if you were continuing the pattern, and binding off as you go. We have bound off all the way across the row. You have just 1 loop left on your needle. You're going to just pull up a long loop of yarn here and cut that so that you can weave it in. Now you can neaten up this last stitch by loosening the ones around it, so you're taking in some of that looseness to the stitches below. Then just use this tail here to neaten that up as you sew in the end and weave it away. Okay, next up we are going to work this stitch when you are knitting in the round. You can cast on any number that is a multiple of 4. And you're working in the round, so you're going to need enough stitches to get around your cable. I've got here like hat size. So I've cast on 68 as if for the Trento hat, which uses this stitch. Now with that hat, I start with ribbing because it's a hat, but you can also just knit this stitch in the round. It's not going to be stretchy like ribbing. To join to knit in the round, I just start knitting. I'm going to knit the first stitch and it's going to link the last and the first stitch together. You'll want to just make sure you pull tight. You can join in the round in any method that you prefer. Okay, so for our knitting in the round, our round 1 is going to be knit 2. So in that first stitch, just going to make sure to tighten the first couple stitches since I'm joining in the round. Now my yarn tail will mark my first stitch, or you can use a stitch marker to mark where the beginning of the round is, which I do recommend for this pattern because between some of the rounds we will have 4 stitches together. Like when we go from round 1 to 2, we'll have 4 purls together. Okay, so knit, join to work in the round and knit your first 2 stitches and then purl 2. Okay, that will be our repeat, knit 2, purl 2. Just repeat that around. All right, at the end of round 1, we're going to purl the last 2 stitches. As we finish our repeat here, we're at our beginning of round marker there. So we just slide that over. Now we're ready to start round 2, which starts with 2 purls. At the end of the round, we had 2 purls and we started with 2 purls. So that stitch marker is defining the difference between those. And then 2 knits. And repeat those 4 stitches around. Here's a look at those ending and starting purls all together. On the last 4 stitches of round 2 here, purl 2, and then we're going to end with 2 knits. Now as we go to the next round, round 3, we'll slip our marker over. And round 3 is a repeat of round 2, so we're just going to start with 2 purls and then knit 2 and repeat that around. Okay, we're at the end of round 3, which ends with 2 knits, and we slide our stitch marker over. We're going to start round 4, which begins with 2 knits. So again, this is where the stitch marker helps because you're actually putting these 4 stitches together here, 2 knits and 2 knits as you change rounds. And then after you knit the first 2, you purl the next 2, and that's your repeat around, knit 2, purl 2. Okay, we're ending round 4 here with our 2 purls. Slip our beginning round stitch marker over. Now we are going to repeat those 4 rounds. So you'll be starting with a round 1 on this round, knit 2, purl 2, and just keep repeating those for the height. And that's how you knit the double moss stitch in the round. You can check out the Trento hat pattern, which uses the stitch in the round with the 1x1 ribbing. I'll link up the pattern in the description for you.